A chilling new video showing the last moments of a Ukrainian refugee's life right before being stabbed to death by a man with a lengthy criminal record on a train in North Carolina. This happened weeks ago.
Todd Pyro, look, she's just on her phone, has no idea what's about to happen. Todd Pyro is here with the latest. Hey, Todd.
The most horrific video, or at least one of that I think we've seen on this program. Surveillance video obtained by News Nation shows 23-year-old Irina Zarutska. She was boarding the train in Charlotte, North Carolina last month. She took a seat right in front of the alleged suspect, but around 4 minutes later, the suspect pulls out a knife and just begins stabbing the victim 30 times, including once in her neck. The suspect later wandered through the train before exiting at the next stop. He was arrested shortly after the stabbing, hospitalized thereafter, before being arrested on a charge of first-degree murder. Records obtained by the New York Post shows he has a lengthy history of convictions dating back more than a decade, including felony larceny, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and communicating threats. He served 5 years for a 2014 robbery and was released in 2020, but was arrested just 5 months later for assaulting his sister. Officials also say he was homeless at the time of the killing and believe it was a random attack. Zarutska was pronounced dead at the scene, her family saying she came to the U.S. to escape war-torn Ukraine. They say in a statement, quote, "Tragically, her life was cut short far too soon. This is an irreparable loss for her family." The suspect currently being held without bond. Back over to you.
My gosh. So that could happen to anyone. I mean, like Lawrence was saying, that could be anybody sitting in that chair. You don't know what's behind you. And this guy, why is he out on the streets?
That's the question. Before he stood up and with his knife, like he's smirking. You see him smirking there, like, I'm about to attack this woman who is about to get stabbed. She's just coming off her job at a pizzeria. And it turns out, one of the things she was doing in Ukraine, compiling stories of women resisting the Russian invasion.
My gosh.
So to be clear, this guy deserves the death penalty for his actions, right? It's premeditated. The way he looked and stands up on him, just brazen in the neck. He's a repeat offender. He had already committed larceny with a deadly weapon. And because our criminal justice system keeps wanting to reimagine things, when people are violent offenders and they have weapons, they don't deserve to be back on the street. I don't care if he's homeless or not. If people have mental health issues, get them the services they need. But we shouldn't have to tolerate them in society while you guys try to figure out a new way of doing the criminal justice system. We're seeing this in every major city. And it's not just like, okay, it's a liberal city and they just stay there. They spread out all across the country.
But Elon Musk is somebody who said, why are people not talking about this crime? And the mayor comes out and says, I'm so glad you guys are not talking about the crime. We don't want to give this a lot of publicity. No, you need a lot of publicity. This is a victim of a crime, brutally killed after surviving the war in Ukraine, came here for some solace just to get a day job and just build her life at 23 and gets hacked to death. I mean, don't tell me that can't happen to you.
Well, he's definitely mentally disturbed. How could you do that to anybody, period? But he's like resting on his hand against the window. Looks like he's maybe about to go to sleep. And then all of a sudden he stands up and then stabs the girl.
Yeah, and then the mayor says, oh, we shouldn't villainize people with mental health issues. Excuse me, everyone that has mental health issues is not going around stabbing people. Then she said, oh, we can't arrest our way out of this. Oh, yes, we can. We can make sure when people are violent offenders that they don't see the daylight anymore.
Now they're going to put security on the trains. Now you guys do it after a victim like this. So now we need to sit cat-a-corner to look both ways because we don't know what lunatic is sitting behind us.
How scary is it too? Like, I mean, we live in New York City. I used to always take the subway. It's cheaper, it's quicker, but I don't ever take it anymore. I haven't taken it since all of the crime went up in New York, and I don't feel safe because of things like this.
Well, I'm on the train every day and the subway maybe twice a week, so you got to always think about that.
Do you ever
I never think about it, especially no. I mean.
But can I just say this too? So there's the people that are the victims of this, but then you have a Daniel Penny. When you do decide to defend yourself, you lose all your money. And you may get a liberal jury that wants to be woke and doesn't want to look at the facts and then give you life in prison for defending yourself. So we're in a no-win situation right now.
But that's why when Michael Whatley runs for Senate against the governor, he's got to bring stuff like this up. The crime in the city is run by a Democratic governor in a mostly Republican state. He's got to contrast that. and say, this is what this is what I would do, this is what I would support.
Crime has become the issue for the next election right now.
I agree.
It is. I didn't predict it was going to be that way.
Economy.
But now it's crime.
And the murder of a young woman putting the spotlight on the judicial system and how we as a nation confront mental illness.
We're talking about this because this suspect had multiple arrests over the years. He also, as we learned, is possibly being diagnosed for mental health issues.
So that's some of the media reaction to the murder of a Ukrainian refugee. She was in North Carolina riding a commuter train when a man with more than a dozen convictions dating back more than a decade stabs her to death for no reason. And Hugh Hewitt is here. Thank you so much for being here. One thing that did catch my eye is just, if you look at the difference of the coverage that the New York Times, for example, and they're not the only ones, gave to Daniel Penny's case, the one, the former Marine who holds the man in the chokehold, who eventually died, and there was a huge trial, and it was such a big deal. So much coverage compared to this story of Irina Zarutska in Charlotte. What do you think of all this?
Well, good morning, Dana. I think there are 16,000 murders in the United States every year. There were in 2024. So that's like 40 a day. And we can't cover them all, but the ones that occur underground and on public transit are usually on film. We saw Mr. Penny. We saw this weekend's tragedy. And the randomness and the mental illness that's evident in the attack on Irina is so disturbing because all of us walk around every day in public and we have no way to prepare for or defend against the randomness of violence absent Good Samaritans like Daniel Penny. In Israel this morning, a terrorist killed 6 people. 6 more people are wounded. Individuals stepped up and murdered the terrorists and shot them before they could kill more people. We rely on our fellow citizens to stop stuff, but you can't stop the mentally deranged, especially when he'd been arrested 14 times, especially after 5 years in prison, and then he attacked his sister and he didn't go to a mental facility. So it's not the nation's mental health problems. It's state legislatures have got to get into the game, create, construct, and instruct on who goes in to psychiatric facilities because there are too many people doing things like this.
And even his mother said, she blamed the courts for letting him be back out. And families do end up in this situation where they know that their loved ones need help and the help is not available. Just in case it was hard to see, in that Daniel Penny versus this Irina story, there were 100 responses that you could click on in the New York Times and 0 for her. Axios wrote this, that the video is easily shared or leaked and can instantly pollinate across social media, a visual counterpoint to statistics showing crime decreases. And Mark Harris of North Carolina, he's a Republican representative. He said the violence in Charlotte is a microcosm of a national epidemic. Americans deserve better than Democrats' soft on crime policies. This is really shaping up to be a stark difference in approaches when it comes to this issue.
And it shouldn't be, Dana. Murder is not a narrative. I read the Axios story. I know the original reporter, Mark Caputo. I'm sure the editors changed the lead that Mark put in there, saying MAGA is seizing upon the Charlotte murder. Nobody's seizing on anything. What the media chooses to do is up to the media. News is where you look is attributed to Dan Rather. The most of legacy media doesn't want to look at this because it does indict blue cities' policies vis-a-vis crime. It's sort of the Donald Trump versus Chicago argument going on right now, where Donald Trump in D.C. stopping the violence in D.C. What the national news media doesn't understand is most Americans will find out everything, and they can't control the narrative. And right now, the reality, as opposed to the narrative, is violence scares Americans, and local, state, and federal officials have to do something.
Hugh Hewitt, you're right about that. Thank you so much for being on the show. Before we go, I just want to show everybody here, there is a GoFundMe, and this is for Irina. I'm sorry, it's for the suspect, excuse me. Here, we have it here. This is it here. You could raise funds to stop the injustice against DeCarlos Brown Jr. However, so this went up. You can see there it only has $5 raised, 1 donation, but GoFundMe is going to pull this out. There is not going to be a GoFundMe for him. So we live and learn, and we enjoy having you on the show. Thank you so much.
All right, great show, you guys. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum, and this is the story. President Trump once again telling Chicago's Democrat leaders that he is waiting for their phone call. Watch this.
And we'd love to go into Chicago and straighten it out. You know, Washington, D.C., you'll be happy to know, is a free and safe zone. It's so safe right now. We're waiting for a call from Chicago. We'll fix Chicago. And I don't know why Chicago isn't calling us saying, please give us help.
The president's critics point to the falling crime rates in areas like D.C. and Chicago. But as one Trump advisor tells Axios today, crime is not a data thing. It is a feeling thing. Politicians don't understand that it's about how you feel when you are walking down a subway platform. He went on to say more, but as one example. And the president drove that home earlier when he highlighted this absolutely horrifying attack out of Charlotte, North Carolina. And we warn you that this video is very disturbing, but very real. This young woman fled war-torn Ukraine. She sat down there on the right-hand side in the subway, just relaxed as could be. She was randomly stabbed to death by this man who was sitting behind her, who she just happened to sit in front of. He has a rap sheet a mile long, but he was freely riding the subway system. He has a long history with mental health issues, I think, which is obvious. Look at this. Is the last time this poor girl walks through the doorway of a subway and sits down. Imagine the horror and the pain that her family is going through. As he look at him, just like rubbing his head. Gee, I think this is the moment. Unbelievable. Correspondent David Spunt following this story live from the Justice Department. Hi, David.
Hi, Martha. Such a sad story. Her name, Irina Zarutska, 23 years old. As you mentioned, she fled war-torn Ukraine shortly after the war began there in 2022, came to the United States, learned English fairly quickly and fluently, according to her obituary. She loved animals, wanted to be a vet tech. This happened on August 22nd on a Friday night in Charlotte on the Lynx, which is their light rail system in uptown Charlotte. But the surveillance video was just recently released, and there are calls for more action after this senseless killing. Minutes after sitting down on August 22nd, as you saw there, she was stabbed to death on the train by this suspect. The surveillance video, no question, disturbing. It shows her sitting on that train with the suspect. She did not know him, according to authorities. She was clearly minding her own business, as the surveillance video shows, before she was brutally killed. His name, DeCarlos Brown. He's homeless. He has a prior criminal record, including assault on a female. Now he's charged with murder. President Trump reacting to that video this morning at a faith event here in Washington.
Man, a lunatic just got up and started. It's right on the tape. Not really watchable because it's so horrible, but just viciously stabbed. She's just sitting there. So they're evil people. We have to be able to handle that. If we don't handle that, we don't have a country.
And we want to put up these mug shots. Just look at this. DeCarlos Brown with quite a criminal history. These were all from multiple different arrests, ranging from the misuse of the 911 system to assault on a female. The crime, though, Martha, once again raising concerns about the revolving door from local judges and local municipalities about letting criminals out too soon. Back to you.
David Spunt, thank you very much.
All right, let's bring in Chris Becker now, former FBI Assistant Director. He's also former chair of the North Carolina Crime Commission. Chris, thanks for being here today. Our hearts break for this girl and her family. And you see the 14 mugshots. We've got them up here in the studio. 14 mugshots over a decade of arrests. I mean, his rap sheet lengthy. Even his mother questioned why the heck anybody was letting him walk freely. Why was he out on the streets, on that train, and able to walk freely and carry out this heinous murder?
Martha, an incredibly tragic and entirely preventable incident that happened here in Charlotte, where I reside. I mean, this is a failure of the system. And the people who promote these soft-on-crime policies, we're a blue city, and these soft-on crime policies have been going on since around 2020 or so. And it is reflected in their homicide rate, which has doubled since 2020 to about 110, 111 homicides in 2024. This guy should never have been out on the street. He had been, his mother had tried, as you mentioned, tried to have him involuntarily committed and succeeded. And as did the public defender that defended him and said, this guy's off, he shouldn't be on the streets. And yet some judge here, an elected judge, kicked him loose and put him right back out on the street. He was supposed to get a forensic examination that never happened, and yet the judge decides, well, we're just going to unclog the system and just let him out. I've seen that before in Mecklenburg County. As I practice law here, when they don't know what to do with somebody, they just kick them back out on the street. You know, if they don't show up for trial, they skip bond, they just dismiss the case. I mean, we've got a criminal justice system here that needs a lot of work.
Yeah, the lack of coverage of this obviously has been questioned, and lack of Democrats standing up and saying, you know, enough with this crime in our American cities. This is a Democrat Chicago alderman, Raymond Lopez, on Fox News earlier today reacting to the killing of this Ukrainian refugee in Charlotte. Listen.
What we need to be is the party that stands up for people, for families like we used to be, the party that believes in being a safety net, but also in accountability. And sadly, the Democratic Party doesn't want to be that right now. They think that standing up for law and order is only a Republican issue. History will prove the Democratic Party wrong in this moment.
I mean, surely Democrats are going to wake up and acknowledge this crime that is happening.
No, they don't seem to feel any accountability for this. It's kind of across the board. They issue the statements like our mayor did, you know, oh, tragic incident, but they completely missed the point. They have accountability for this. They're the ones that are no bail, you know, no cash bail. You know, let's give them second, third, and fourth chances, even for violent crimes. Let's dismiss cases if they don't feel like showing up for court. We don't prosecute drug crimes and misdemeanors here in Charlotte. So. But they don't seem to feel that accountability for that, and that's the blue cities across the country, and you can see it in the crime rates. Even though they try to, you know, non-arrest their way out of having high crime. In other words, they don't make as many arrests as they used to, and therefore they say we've got falling crime. You know, we all know that the crime rates, and you can't cook the books when it comes to homicides. We all know they're on the rise because the homicides here have doubled, even though violent crimes have gone down, like they say, 3%. I think that's just cooking the books.
Yeah. I want to finish off with President Trump earlier today on Chicago and what may be coming next. Listen.
You try and reason with people like in Chicago with the governor and the mayor. You try and reason with them, and it's like you're talking to a wall. We'd love to go into Chicago and straighten it out. You know, Washington, D.C., you'll be happy to know, is a free and safe zone. It's so safe right now.
So that was President Trump earlier today. He has hinted that perhaps they will act similarly as they did in Washington, D.C. and Chicago. We've had residents say that the federal government is welcome to come in. What do you believe needs to happen, Chris? Final thought to you.
Right. It is irrefutable that when you put more visible police presence on the streets, and you actually prosecute the criminals and put the worst of the worst in jail, that your crime rates will go down and people will feel safer. So, I don't know about the National Guard. There's all kinds of legal nuances there when it's not the District of Columbia and it's a city where the governor doesn't consent to the National Guard. You can still flood the zone with federal agents, DEA, FBI, ATF, prosecute those cases in federal court where they'll actually get real prosecution and real time and no good time. You know, we know that if you do that, you can reduce crime and people will feel safer.
Well, we'll see if the administration announces anything on Chicago in the coming days, I'm sure. Chris, thank you very much. Good to have you here today.
Thank you, Sandra.
All right, Bill.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Perino along with Paul Morrow, Jessica Tarlov, Jesse Waters, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five.
A lunatic just got up and started. It's right on the tape. Not really watchable because it's so horrible, but just viciously stabbed. She's just sitting there. So they're evil people. We have to be able to handle that. If we don't handle that, we don't have a country.
So that was President Trump reacting to a horrific story out of Charlotte, North Carolina. A career criminal, 14 prior arrests, fatally stabbing a Ukrainian refugee in the neck, completely unprovoked as she sat just minding her own business after she was working all night on the city's light rail. Irina Zarutska had fled the war in Ukraine, and she was looking for safety here in America, and she embraced the USA. And then she became a victim of America's revolving door of violent criminals. The city's Democrat mayor, she seemed to be more concerned over whether people were sharing the video online. And CNN's Brian Stelter felt the urge to lecture about racism.
Elon Musk, Charlie Kirk, other Trump-aligned figures succeeded in making this senseless death a symbol of big city crime. Some of the comments around this story are baldly racist, stoking fear of African Americans because this man attacked a white woman. The open racism on sites like X today, it's eye-popping. But there are also legitimate questions about this so-called career criminal, someone who had been a repeat offender. And those questions, I hope they're not lost amid all of the cesspool kind of comments on social media.
More on that in a moment. And the senseless murder comes as Democrats protest President Trump's vow to expand his crime crackdown to Chicago. They're ignoring the violence, but are outraged over the memes. President Trump posting this AI rework of the movie Apocalypse Now with the caption, "I love the smell of deportations in the morning." Chicago about to find out why it's called the Department of War. The president then sparring with a reporter who took that meme as a serious declaration of war.
That's fake news. When you say that, darling, that's fake news.
Well, why would you use the Department of Defense?
Listen, be quiet. Listen. You don't listen. You never listen. That's why you're second rate. We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our cities. We're going to clean them up so they don't kill 5 people every weekend. That's not war. That's common sense.
Greg, the life of the Ukrainian refugee is worth pausing for a moment, or many more moments over. She escaped Putin, embraced the United States, got a job at a pizzeria, was in her uniform, taking public transit on her way home afterwards, and then this guy just stabbed her in the back.
Yeah, but you know what's worse than her murder? According to Brian Stelter, it's posting on social media. That's where he concentrated his concern, his antipathy, and then he says, but it's okay to question it as long as you're Brian Stelter, a fat white guy who should be fired again at CNN. He is one of the reasons why these crimes happen, because anytime you dare question crime, it's jerks, scumbags like him that call you a racist. I'm tired also of the term mental illness being used as a cover for criminality. When a thug targets a woman, that is not insane. He knows she's weaker. When he comes from behind with a knife, that's not insane. He minimizes her ability to inflict harm on him. When the thug flees, that's sane because he knows if he stays, he'll be arrested. So what would be insane would be if he were to face off against a man without a weapon, somebody like a Tyrus. That would be insane. You'd go, okay, that's crazy. But almost all of these people that do this stuff, they go after women. That is not insane. That's self-preservation. This is not insanity. It's an evil mind. And it's an evil mind that is somehow excused in a culture that weaponizes victim status. In this case, mental illness. And what is it about a society that contributes to this? And I say this based on my own personal evidence of being on city streets every single day in New York, that when a homeless person is shouting at people, he's not shouting, "I really made a mess of my life. Boy, I really screwed up." No, his aggression is purely blaming other things and other people. He blames the world, he blames people, he blames you. So we're living in a progressive ideological nightmare where the worst in society is empowered by a sense of victimhood. So when this happens, they will still get people like Brian Stelter that says, oh, be careful of the racism, or other people saying, you know what? We really need to be concerned about our services to the mentally ill, which may or may not be true, but he's not mentally ill. He needs to be executed. Lastly, I asked Grok for a conservative count of the number of times the George Floyd video was played, looking at tweets and social media, Instagram, news networks. It came to a conservative number of 975 million times. That is not counting retweets. So that is a snapshot of this liberal disease, the hierarchy of problems. The media and politicians, people like Stelter, implore you not to cover one problem, but to amplify another one to a destructive degree that leads to riots, leads to dozens of deaths. But do not cover this other thing because that is racist. And that is not as important. In the hierarchy of problems, we decide what you cover.
That was also, the George Floyd comparison was so good. Daniel Penny also we showed today.
Yes.
If you go to the New York Times, you type in Daniel Penny, you can get 100, there we go right here actually, thank you, control room. You get 100 results for Daniel Penny, is 0 for her. Paul, The mayor of the city said today, we can't arrest our way out of this problem.
Yeah.
But he had been arrested so many times and continually let back on the street.
Look, we can't arrest our way into everybody having perfect mental health, but we can arrest our way into the rest of us being a hell of a lot safer on public transport and in the public arena here. So she completely misses the point. She also says, in a staggering statement, she says that this is shedding light on the problems with society safety nets related to mental health care and the systems that should be in place. You're the mayor. Hello, you want to put a system in place? We'll hold your coat. Go ahead. But, she's not doing it. Instead, she's coming in after the fact. Now, let's progress the story a little bit, as you always say. Let's some of the stuff that could happen now that's almost not, certainly not going to happen. Mamdani is going to come in. He's going to make all the buses free. He's going to make the subway free. Who do you think goes on public transport when it's free? Well, I'll give you a clue. Right now, they don't enforce theft of service, which is essentially tantamount to having the transit system free. And that's why you have an explosion of mentally ill and homeless people riding those rails. What is the result? 52% of this city is female. Every woman I know, especially young women, are afraid of the subways. We have half the population is afraid to go on the subway. That costs us billions. And the downstream effect of that, just to give you a quick example, is the fact that because women can't come into the city late night into Manhattan, you look around, you see all the boarded up storefronts, you see the bars closing, you see the clubs closing. You see the fact that New York City now rolls up the sidewalks at 10 p.m. It's no longer the city that doesn't sleep. Why is that? Because nobody can come to work and then get out at 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, go on the subway. They can't do it. And they can't afford Uber, right? So that's not going to happen. Greg's 100% right about the woman issue. And here's another thing. This poor girl who survived Ukraine did everything right. Why? She has her hair up, all right? Ladies, you got to go on public transport. Hair is a big attractor, all right? That's just it. There's two things that attract mentally ill people, if you want to call them that, towards women, and it's almost always women. Even in Jordan Neely's case, he was going at a woman when Daniel Penny jumped up out of the seat, right? A woman with a baby. You got your hair and your eyes. Don't make eye contact. If you've got bright blue eyes, maybe wear glasses. This poor girl, she's wearing glasses. She got her hair up. It still happens. I want to go to one last point, just because you're talking about the Democrats and progressives. James Carville was on earlier today. And he's talking about the fact that why aren't you talking about, it might have been yesterday, why aren't you talking about the fact that Joe Biden helped put in place in 1994 this great crime bill? Well, first of all Biden did was vote for it. But who did do it was Bill Clinton, and more power to him. Where is he? Where is he now? What have you done for us lately? All right, because he knew at the time that this was an important issue. And I got to tell you something, just to be clear and truth in advertising here, we used to call it Clinton overtime when I came on the police department. We used to get it was called Condor, but it was Clinton overtime, and it worked. And it was essentially a federal endorsement of broken windows policing. Now, right now, in this current environment, when everybody's mad at Trump over putting the National Guard into the cities and highlighting this crime issue, where is Bill Clinton? Where are the elders of the Democratic Party who were a lot more sane in the 90s and helped turn all of this around? Again, I'm going to use it as our cities become the nut job archipelago.
Jessica, I know you don't speak for all of the Democrats, but you speak for yourself on this one. What do you think?
It's horrific. I'm glad that the video, most of the time when it comes across your feed, freezes because it's heart-wrenching. I'm glad that there are cameras everywhere now, so these things are documented and we just don't hear kind of a lackluster, someone was murdered on a bus, because people should understand how raw and villainous and evil this act was. I am one of the insane, women who does take the subway, and I will tie my hair back. I didn't know about that, but I certainly do try to avoid making eye contact with people. There has been a surge of police officers put on the trains. I think Kathy Hochul said that there is one for every train, but that's obviously not in every car. And there are issues, even though we're trending in the right direction. When Greg said we shouldn't make this about mental health, I understand that there is sometimes someone that is so depraved that we can't talk about that. But when the justice system has failed this many times, that he, had been arrested 14 times and he did serve his time, and even the mother had reported him for mental illness, this is going to cause us to open up the conversation about involuntary commitments. And I think that people would probably be open to the idea that this guy should have been in a home versus being able to sit on the bus behind this innocent woman. No, I know. I'm just saying if the justice system isn't going to do it, that.
All right. Jesse, let me give you the remaining
Sure.
time.
I mean, you got a black ex-con that stabs a beautiful Ukrainian refugee to death on public transit, and the media is silent. And then last weekend, 57 shot, and the media is silent. So what's the common denominator? Black perpetrator. These whites that are liberal, that run the media organizations, hold blacks to a lower standard than whites. And they're afraid of getting called racist, as Greg said, by their white colleagues. And they're afraid of Sharpton haranguing them about airing the community's dirty laundry. Because usually when beautiful blonde women get hurt, it's all over the television. Natalie Holloway, the girls in Idaho. You can't stop from seeing it. Now, this you'd think is the poster child for asylum seeker. She's from Europe, so she can assimilate easily. Her country is literally being invaded by Putin. She qualifies for refugee status, and she was working, so she's not a public charge. And then you have DeCarlos, who's the poster child for permissive politicians. The guy's a schizophrenic. He's been in and out of the court system his whole life since he was a minor, and he's obviously a threat to himself and everybody around him. And they turn the guy loose on the rest of us. And it's about they don't want to incarcerate, they want to rehabilitate. We talk about the homeless industrial complex, how people profit from homeless. People are profiting from criminals. Instead of incarcerating them, they let them go to these community centers where they rehab them about addiction and violence, and none of that works, but people still get paid, and they get paid a lot of money. The chief of police in D.C., stunning statistic, says the average homicide suspect has been arrested 11 times. So these people, this guy's 14 arrests, he is advertising that he's a ticking time bomb. He's telling society he's going to hurt somebody. And if society doesn't listen, then society has blood on their hands. That's why you have to take the discretion away from these stupid DAs and judges. They can't be trusted anymore. You have to bring back mandatory minimum sentences on the federal level. I don't know, 3 strikes, 4 strikes, 5 strikes. How about 7 strikes? Is that enough? And then you got to put them in a loony bin. Biden spent, what, $8 billion building 8 charging stations? I think we could build 8 insane asylums with that money.
And even his mom, as Jessica said, she wanted him to be locked up. And,
yeah, he beat his little sister to a pulp.
All right, up next, it's the Socialist Squad to the rescue. AOC and Bernie team up with Zoran as the Democrats struggle with the path forward.
So with that, we bring in Karl Rove, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff, now a Fox News contributor, and Tim Ryan, former Democratic Ohio Congressman. Great to have both of you with us. I just want to put up on the wall, these are some of the worst who are on the list, who they hope to gather up and get off the streets during this Operation Midway Blitz. I'll just tell you some, history of aggravated unlawful use of a weapon, domestic battery, kidnapping, sexual assault, Tren de Aragua gang members, all listed here. Karl, what do you think of this effort and this push in places like Chicago and Boston and the political impact of it?
Well, look, under federal law, there's a program called 287G, which basically says the federal government can sign agreements with states and local communities to take care of some of the issues of illegal immigration. And one particular one is called jail enforcement, where literally the federal government would say, let us know when you have an illegal who's committed a crime, and we will take them off of your hands and deal with them. Move them out of the country if need be, or keep them in federal penitentiary until their time is served, and then move them out of the country. However, it's prohibited by law in California, Connecticut, Illinois, New Jersey, and Washington State for any entity inside those states to participate in the 287G program. There are 3 states where there have never been agreements between the feds and relatively small states, but in 42 states there are agreements. Now, sanctuary cities don't allow 287G agreements. Why the Democrats in these big cities don't say, look, we want to work with the federal government. If we get an illegal alien who's committed a crime, we're going to turn them over to you, and you can deal with them as you like after we have convicted them of a crime and send them to prison for that offense.
I mean, these are low-hanging fruit and politically positive, I would think, Tim Ryan, for anyone, any law-abiding citizen to want off the street. And some of these, ICE has lodged arrest detainers 12 different times on these individuals, and yet you have Mayor Brandon Johnson complaining about how much money is being spent on ICE. Watch this.
When the president of the United States of America put so much money into ICE, where the only other forces that have more resources than ICE is the United States government's army and China's army. That's a problem. That's a threat to our democracy.
First of all, his numbers are wrong there. It's $19 billion a year for this new ICE effort versus $850 billion for our defense effort. But Tim Ryan, the politics of this, are Democrats sort of, barking up the wrong tree? And will there be backlash?
Well, you have to start off with the premise that crime is bad, and we have an obligation to protect our citizens. And I think these kind of efforts need to be looked at. You can't have people with masks on jumping out of cars, pulling people out, arresting American citizens. As long as you have those protections in place and make sure you're not scaring the hell out of everybody, you need to get rid of the bad guys. Period. End of story. There should be no compromise there.
Well, these are not American citizens. These are citizens of other countries.
Yeah, no. So I'm just saying we've had incidents where American citizens have been arrested. We've seen people coming out with masks on. We don't need to do that. That's a bad look for America.
I hear you. I mean, we've heard so much about the Maryland man who is not a Maryland man. He's an El Salvadoran. But go ahead.
We bad guys. Let's be clear. Bad guys got to get out. I'm going to ask a really dumb question. Why aren't we hiring more cops? We just had a huge tax cut for Elon Musk and others costing us trillions of dollars. Why aren't we hiring more cops on the beat in these cities? Vast majority of the crime being committed is by American citizens and who are doing bad things. We need to get them off the street too. So let's hire more cops.
Well, I don't think anybody would object to the man who just killed that young woman in North Carolina being off the street. Carl, let me ask you about this, though. Listen to this from Harry Enton with regard to the president's polling numbers among Hispanic voters. Watch this.
Two key groups that were so important to getting Donald Trump a second term. He did so much better than the traditional Republican among those under the age of 30 and Hispanics. And Hispanics, he was 6 points underward. Look at this, minus 34 points. That's a 28-point move since February. No wonder Donald Trump's in trouble.
Is that a problem politically for the president and his party, Carl?
Yes, we have seen a really interesting thing. There's growing support in the country, even among grassroots Democrats, on doing something about criminal illegals. On the other hand, there's growing support for the concept of immigration. People are using this controversy in order to say, let's go get the bad guys, but it is important to the future of America that we have immigration into our country, and particularly people who are going to be filling jobs that otherwise are going to be difficult to fill in construction and so forth. So there's two dynamics going on here. Why the Democrats don't simply say, look, you know what, we want to join in getting rid of the criminal illegals. Well, let's do 287G agreements between local and state law enforcement and federal law enforcement to achieve that. Why we have Illinois and California, for example, two of our biggest states, going the opposite direction and saying sanctuary states, not just sanctuary cities, is beyond me.
Yeah, it's a good point. It'll be interesting to see if Democrats can figure out how to politically make this a positive for them as well. And we will see. Tim Ryan, thank you very much. Karl Rove, good to have both of you with us. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Well, good afternoon and live from Texas. This is the Will Cain Show. It's Monday, post-Labor Day, back to school, back to work. The beginning of dove season should be a national holiday, and it's also back to football on Sundays. It can be tough, though, to see the bright side on a Monday, but President Trump reminds us that as a nation, we have a lot to look forward to in America.
I end up getting the Olympics, the World Cup at 250. It's amazing the way God works, isn't it? It's amazing. Isn't it amazing the way God works? It's true.
The Olympics, the World Cup, when you have guests coming over to your house, you pick up, you clean up. Maybe that's why the president is hell-bent on keeping America safe.
A madman, a lunatic, just got up and started. It's right on the tape. Not really watchable because it's so horrible, but just viciously stabbed. She's just sitting there. So they're evil people. We have to be able to handle that. If we don't handle that, we don't have a country.
The president is talking about chilling video lighting up social media this weekend. It is disturbing to watch. It shows 23-year-old Irina Zarutska. She's a refugee from Ukraine, boarding Charlotte, North Carolina's light rail train just after 9:45 p.m. on August 22nd. She's sitting, scrolling on her phone. A man in a red hoodie is sitting behind her. After 4 minutes, he casually and unpredictably pulls out a knife and stabs her 3 times. She was dead at the scene. And if that's not horrifying enough, right after, he roams around the train car, waiting by the doors as passengers look on, leaving behind him a trail of blood. The suspect, DeCarlos Brown Jr., is a career criminal with 14 arrests, at least 14 arrests. And those convictions, they date back more than a decade, including arrests for felony larceny, robbery with a dangerous weapon, and communicating threats. After serving 5 years for a 2014 robbery, he was back on the street. 5 months later, in 2020, he was arrested for assaulting his sister. Again, quickly, back on the street. This past January, North Carolina Magistrate Judge Teresa Stokes granted Brown release after his arrest for misuse of the 911 system, based upon the release, a written promise that he would return for his court hearing. That case, by the way, pending when he boarded the light rail last month. Also stunning, support for these kinds of criminals. Look at this. It's a now removed GoFundMe page for the suspect. It reads, quote, "While what happened on the Blue Line was a tragedy, what we mustn't lose sight of is the fact that DeCarlos Brown Jr. was failed categorically by the judicial system and the mental health services of North Carolina, and as such is not entirely to blame for what happened. Mental health has become a catch-all for this country to excuse the greatest of our sins." And it sounds a lot like what we heard from Charlotte's mayor, Vi Lyles. She wrote, "We will never arrest our way out of issues such as homelessness and mental health. Mental health disease is just that, a disease like any other that needs to be treated with the same compassion, diligence, and commitment as cancer or heart disease." By comparing mental health to cancer, she makes DeCarlos Brown the victim in this horrible murder. By blaming the system, she absolves responsibility for DeCarlos Brown. And there was no responsibility for the city of Chicago, at least their leaders, who I guess are hard work at investigating. They treated themselves to a break from a safety briefing on the incident to eat cake. So why are we just hearing about this now, this horrific crime? It's been since August 22nd, but it hits your radar, my radar, just this past weekend in September. Well, it's because of one of the biggest lies of omission, silence from the media. Let's explain over at the wall. If you search right now for the victim's name, Irina Zarutska, on the New York Times, as of earlier this morning, you got absolutely 0 results. That's the name, again, of the Ukrainian refugee murdered on that light rail train in Charlotte. 0 results. Now, if I took another incident on mass transportation, say Daniel Penny stepping up as a vigilante to help people on the New York City subway, you search that on the New York Times, 100 results. Now, why would that be? Why would one story demand 100 articles and another story 0 articles? And it's because the media is more interested in the all capitals story, the narrative, than the facts or the truth. Take a look at the difference here. I want to show you the actual truth when it comes to crime. The story is about race. Race. Take a look at the black on white crimes, 385,000 in 2023. The white on black crimes, just under 118,000. You see the comparative numerical difference. But now, here's what the media actually does. They did what our camera operator just began to do a moment ago. I'm going to step out of the way. I'm going to show you literally what the media does with the camera. They zoom in on this number. This number, devoid of context, devoid of any facts, devoid of any understanding for the audience, is the only number that is zoomed in on by the media. Never do you understand the stories like this one we just saw out of Charlotte. Now, the media has already begun to address away what just happened in Charlotte. Axios writes, "Stabbing video fuels MAGA's crime message." Inside the article, they write, "The big picture. The rising number of surveillance cameras in public spaces, including on Charlotte's light rail, has become a big accelerant in these cases. The video is easily shared or leaked and can instantly pollinate across social media, a visual counterpoint to stats showing crime decreases." You see, the problem isn't the murder. The problem, according to Axios, is the surveillance cameras and that you know about the murder. We wouldn't, any of us know, but for social media. And this isn't the only story. There was that viral brawl in Cincinnati, the tragic stabbing at a track meet in Frisco, Texas, that killed Austin Metcalf, and now this horrific stabbing in Charlotte. All right, joining me now on all of this is film director and historian Erin Durham, who grew up in Charlotte and lived downtown, rode the light rail, and her husband, former nuclear scientist for the U.S. Department of Energy in North Carolina, Matt Van Swole. Thank you both for being with us here today. Matt, let's start with why this story gets no coverage. It still, to some point, has not broken through outside of social media and a few outlets like this one on Fox News. Why is that? Why is the public not allowed to know about what happened in Charlotte?
Well, it's the same reason that the coverage for Helene didn't break through as well, which we went through down here in Asheville, North Carolina, which was there's a narrative and it must be pushed at all costs. And if the narrative crosses into a political realm, let's just say left, that they don't want you to know about, you will not see the story. And Erin's got some terrifying stories of her riding the light rail and being chased downtown.
So, Erin, this is not an isolated incident, what we just saw take place with this refugee from Ukraine?
No, I mean, I got super lucky growing up because my parents are just very safety oriented. My mom worked downtown, and she was almost assaulted on the street of downtown Charlotte, and luckily she's a second-degree black belt and she broke his nose, so she was fine. But there are so many stories like that, and the police came up to her right afterwards and said, like, thank you, because you need to teach, like, we can lock this person up, but immediately after they're going to be on the street again. You hear about businesses downtown, because things aren't reported on the news. Businesses downtown will tell their employees, like, hey, somebody got assaulted in the parking garage last night, or they kind of warn their employees. But why on earth are we not, as a nation, actually telling the statistics as they are, that violent crime is up, that murder is up? I don't care if it's mental illness. If someone has committed a violent crime, they need to be in jail, right? Like, that just makes sense.
Well, the media is only one angle of this. And Matt, while I agree with you, it's about politics, there's a lot of elements to why it's politics. There is a reluctance or an unwillingness to tell the truth so it doesn't embolden President Trump's push to stop crime with the National Guard across the country. It's also the racial element, unwilling to tell stories where the characters don't fit the racial narrative that's needed for the media. But there's also the political angle, not just the media. And Erin, you brought this up. Why aren't these guys prosecuted? Why aren't they kept in jail? Who are the prosecutors and who are the judges in places like Charlotte, North Carolina? Well, there are Congress people like Representative Jasmine Crockett who are actually advocating for keeping criminals on the street. I want you to listen to Jasmine Crockett.
I don't want anybody to mistake what I'm saying. Just because you are impoverished does not mean that you will be a criminal. But I do want to be clear that there is a direct link between poverty and susceptibility to having to engage in certain things. I want people to understand that there are crimes that are committed not because people are criminals, but because they literally are trying to survive.
So some crime, Erin, is excusable because of poverty.
Absolutely ridiculous. I am working right now pro bono, telling the stories of kids from the worst of the worst situations that got scholarships to go and follow their dreams. These kids are academically gifted, incredible human beings, doing amazing things for this world already at 18, 19 years old. Poverty does not mean you get to be a criminal. Having a hard life does not mean you get to stab a woman in the face and get out. Like, we're dealing with this in Asheville as well. We got messages off of X for the past 48 hours from people in Chicago, Denver, Salt Lake City, DC, New York City. These people are pissed. They want someone to step in and start getting rid of bail, making sure that if you commit a violent crime, you are in jail. Like, very simple, regardless of why you did it.
Right. No, poverty's not an excuse, and neither, by the way, is mental health. All right, Matt Vanswell, Aaron Durham, thank you both for being with us here today.
Thank you, Will. We love you.
Right. Thank you.
Florida Senator Ashley Moody knows something about enforcing the law. She sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee, was previously the AG of Florida. We're happy she's with us tonight. Senator, thank you for joining us.
Great to be with you, and thanks for calling out the truth.
What happened in this case, Senator, and why are the courts and these prosecutors, and obviously the laws that are passed to allow this type of catch and release to continue, why is this happening still in the United States of America?
You know, great question, and I love how you put it out there that the media is trying to spin this as the MAGA crime message. How about the guarantee of this country? In fact, when we became a country, it was a core function of government to protect the security and safety of its people so that we could protect their rights. And if a city is not doing that, if a state is not doing that, they are failing its citizens. In fact, what this video shows is that the Dems that are trying to hide this and are in charge of these cities, they believe that, I guess, the only people that should be safe are the folks that can drive a car or live behind a gate. I mean, how about people that have to use public transportation, have to live in these communities, in these cities? And I'm just so grateful there are people like you and President Trump and others that are willing to call this out for what it is. It is the result of insane policies. They're hypocritical policies because Florida did it completely different. Everything that, for example, the North Carolina governor currently used to be the AG there. He started a task force and came up with things like decriminalizing crime, letting no cash bail, all of the things that were the opposite of what Governor DeSantis and I pushed in Florida, which was completely different policies, which we called stronger, safer cities. And while the new North Carolina crime is skyrocketing, Florida's is at a 50-year low crime rate. So it is all comes down to policies, and you have to have strong leadership.
Yeah, CNN's Brian Stelter says a certain thing is happening in the aftermath of this Charlotte murder. Watch.
Trump-aligned figures succeeded in making this senseless death a symbol of big city crime. Some of the comments around this story are baldly racist, stoking fear of African Americans because this man attacked a white woman. The open racism on sites like X today, it's eye-popping. But there are also legitimate questions about this so-called career criminal.
This so-called career criminal, again, similar narratives we've seen before. They're trying to turn this into a racial issue, and what people who are actually reporting on it are trying to say is, no, the truth is the truth. It doesn't matter about who's doing what your skin color is. The truth is the truth, and they're either not covering it or trying to frame it as an issue only as it relates to Trump voters. I mean, this woman was a refugee from Ukraine, for goodness sakes. She came here for a respite and for, I would imagine, protection, and the rule of law matters here.
And it breaks my heart that that type of charge, wouldn't the opposite be true if you had leaders that wanted to ignore going in and protecting citizens and doing everything they could to bring a crime rate down and making people feel safe just because they might be of a particular race or majority minority? I mean, we are Americans, and this country and leaders should stand up first and foremost to dedicating resources and brain power and strategy to make communities safe. I mean, some of these sanctuary cities have evolved even more so into sanctuaries for criminals. I mean, Pritzker released what he called a safety act, which police came out and prosecutors came out and were like, you cannot do this. It's going to make our state so much more dangerous. What we did in Florida was like, we're going to do the exact opposite of what they're pushing. And you're seeing in Illinois people getting out. It's a revolving jailhouse door. So of course they undermined the safety of these communities. And if you won't admit that, if you're going to refuse help from the federal government, from Trump, just because he's the president and you don't like him, you should be coming out every single day and saying, what resources are you dedicating? What policies are you changing? How are you shifting course and protecting your people?
Oh, Senator, thank you very much. Great to see you tonight.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.